Hello, welcome back to Football Forecast. We are going to be talking all about our predictions for the Premier League season. I think we've got some of these majorly wrong. Maybe we've got some of them majorly right. Joining me is James Allcott and Nubaid Haroon. Now, I wasn't part of all of these, so there's some that I am a part of, some that I'm not, but you guys have done all of them. So I want to see if actually you'll remember what you put in. James, who did you have for your league winner?
Man City, definitely Man City.
We both said you're both on the same page.
Yeah, I remember saying my gut said Liverpool, but due to the season before, my gut being woeful, I said I was going to go sensible this year, and so went with the obvious choice of Man City.
I couldn't tell you what I was thinking. I think
you had more belief in Liverpool in August, didn't you, than you do now?
Yeah, 110%. I don't think I ever backed Liverpool to win the league at that time, though. I was quite convinced on City, to be fair, only because they signed Haaland and Liverpool had a very poor transfer window. So
it was, we were wondering Darwin versus Haaland. You went with Liverpool.
I did go with Liverpool, and
silly.
I don't know why I did that. I have no idea why I did that.
In all fairness, though, at the time of making those predictions, Liverpool were very close to winning a quadruple.
Yes.
Sure.
And so, 4 weeks later, we're getting asked for Premier League predictions. So I say blame the producer, ain't
you? Absolutely. There we go. Fully blame production. But I did go for Liverpool, so you two were absolutely correct there. Our top four. Now, this is, again, extremely interesting. James, do you remember what you had, or would you like me to tell you?
I'm not sure I can say it. So you say, yeah, go on, Abbi, you tell me.
Okay, James, you had Manchester City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea. Nubaid, you had Manchester City, Liverpool, Spurs, Arsenal. And I had Liverpool, Man City, Spurs, Arsenal.
Good Lord. I mean, so mine's the worst. So I've got three that didn't make it into the Champions League. So Liverpool, Tottenham and Chelsea. We all went with Spurs.
What can I say?
You had a good transfer window, though.
We did. Well, on paper, we had a good transfer window. We just had a genuinely terrible season. Nothing panned out for us. So at the time, when we made these predictions, it didn't seem like an unfair shout. Also had Antonio Conte. Thought, they're going to keep on this season.
Do you know what so when I come back round to this point in the season, I get a new learning, right? And I think my new learning this time is don't get totally swept away with everyone, because the Perisic signing, everyone was so excited about Perisic, and I kind of went, okay, I sort of went with it. I didn't really get it. His numbers aren't actually that bad in terms of his assists, but overall, he's been very, very disappointing, obviously, as Tottenham have as well. Liverpool, I think fair shout to expect them to be in the Champions League, and they had an absolute disaster. Chelsea, I mean...
Wait, why did you think that? Because I remember you, in a separate video, going 600 million, they didn't buy a striker. How did you end up with Chelsea in your top four?
Well, this is before all that. This is before the 600 million, isn't it?
Fair.
So Tuchel's still the manager in this world that we lived in August. They bought Sterling. They bought Koulibaly, who we all thought was going to be great as well. I think I definitely said Koulibaly's going to be a great... Wow, him and Thiago Silva. You could go to a back four now, maybe.
But I think everybody thought that. He's been a real disappointment this season.
Sterling's been terrible as well. I think it highlights how important management is. I think sometimes people turn their nose up at that, but Conte, if Conte hadn't done that bad despite the football looking turgid, and then you fallen off a cliff because he blew up your club in that press conference.
But you were actually in a good place.
Yeah.
I think people were saying
do well.
They should be doing better than this, but you were doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and then Conte obviously...
When Conte left, Tottenham were fourth in the Premier League. So at that time, maybe if the board had gone and got a competent manager in after Antonio Conte left. By the way, I totally agree with everything he said when he had that massive blowout after Southampton. He was absolutely accurate with everything he said, but he only did it so he could get a P45. But that's irrelevant. But I think that on paper, everyone would have thought that Tottenham would have pushed on from last year. Getting top four, they had a good summer in terms of signings, and it's easy to look back and say 60 million on Richarlison's too much. Perisic, what did he do? Basuma. Well, these are good players, and two of them are Premier League proven.
Basuma was wonderful for Brighton.
Wonderful, and I was so excited to have him. I think Arsenal winning with him as well at the time, and for whatever reason, nothing has worked at Tottenham. But I think the main lesson here is never ever put your eggs in Tottenham's basket, even if you think that. Don't ever do it.
In a separate video, I was talking about this season's not had many narratives or vibes. At the start of the season, we backed Spurs because Conte was there, so we were going, next season Conte wins the league, like it's what happens.
Yes.
There was no vibes, there was no narrative.
Although you did believe in Arsenal, both of you, so well done there.
Arteta, I believed in Arteta.
They had a good pre-season, hadn't they?
Yeah,
But
and also I think you could see where they were going, and
last season.
you can still see where they're going. Obviously, Arsenal fans now in hindsight are saying it's not been a good season, but they are they've gone from this far away from being league contenders, and they're now this close to contending again next season. So they're going in the right direction.
As a Liverpool fan, though, you know, I had you to win the league. We all had them in the top 4. I mean, I know that you had a good end to the season, but you must be pretty disappointed.
Yes and no. At one point, Liverpool were 11th in the league and could have been in a Spurs or a Chelsea situation. So to end up running 4th close is really encouraging for the next season. And also, there was genuinely a point in the season, I think I said it here, that it might be the end for Klopp. Not because of anything he was particularly doing wrong, because the cycle just felt like it ended. And he's found a fix. And I don't think that's been talked about a lot, but I think he's now found a solution for the problem we've had for the entire duration of the season. And now Liverpool are linked to midfielders at long last. Yeah. So all of a sudden, we're back and we're ready to do it again.
Oh, we're back. We're back.
It's interesting, like the feeling and the facts are two different things. So like for Arsenal, they feel like rubbish, but the facts are really impressive. Liverpool, it's like you said, it's kind of the other way around. Like you feel all right because you've finished the season pretty strongly. That's an interesting one in terms of the overall season. Bottom 3.
Yeah, bottom 3.
That was rubbish as well.
Yeah, you guys, James, you had Brentford, Fulham and Bournemouth. You had the same. I had Fulham, Bournemouth and Southampton. So nice. I got, not too bad. I did have a feeling about Southampton. I have publicly apologised to Fulham fans as well, who have kind of slated me and said, why would you think we'd go down? And that was purely for the fact that they are naturally a bit of a yo-yo team. They go up, they come down, they sack the manager, they spend a lot of money and they go back down. But credit to Marco Silva this season, done a wonderful job. Also Gary O'Neill, we gave him loads of credit on a show a few weeks ago, saying how well they've done to keep Bournemouth up. Southampton, I always felt they were just lingering around that zone. And
great shout though, great shout.
I also did have Leicester as one that I didn't put in, but it was like, I was discussing it.
I don't see it on the sheet.
It's not on the sheet, but if you check back on the video, I said I feel they could get sucked in, which they did, but I didn't actually have it. But you guys, what happened to your predictions? Brentford.
On my channel, I had Southampton going down. So something happened between those 2 days.
Came and sat with me.
And came and sat with you. Do you want another one, back to that learning, don't get swept away. Fulham. I bottled that. I thought they'd be... My gut said that they would be fine. And I just went, okay. So that's my learning.
I want to know about Brentford because Thomas Frank is a brilliant manager. They're a very well-run club. They've got a great system in terms of their recruitment. Yeah. What made you both think that Brentford were going to go down?
I think second season syndrome for me. I think they hadn't overly strengthened at that point. I think it was only Damsgaard who'd really come in for them. Ben Mee, who actually turned out to be a fantastic signing. Again, it's one of those where you're sort of focusing maybe too much on the signings or lack of signings. And they hadn't spent that much money and didn't play great football, which Brighton is, different thing. They're kind of on that same trajectory. But Brighton played good football, whereas Brentford weren't at that stage as a team that had come up a couple of seasons before. But I won't do it again.
I mean, also, it's at that period, you're near transfer window time. So, you're very attracted to any team signing players. Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about the next
yes,
thing
we are.
And my gut there was based on the fact they've signed loads of players. Right. And then, like you say, the learning there probably is signings don't mean everything's going to be great.
We should really make predictions after the first 3 games of the season. I mean, I know that won't happen because
I
that's
often
not
do
fun.
it after the transfer window as well. And I think I need to go and have a look at that. That's probably a bit closer. You were talking about the overachievers there. So I went with Forest. Abby, you're out of this one.
I am out of this one.
I went with Forest. You went with Leeds.
I'll be honest, when I looked at that sheet, I thought I said Forest, which is why I was teeing myself up to say I got it right. Again, I looked at Leeds' transfer window and I thought they actually had a very solid transfer window. I think most people agreed at the time. Then they lost Tyler Adams during the season. And then in all fairness...
No Bamford for a lot of it as well.
Yeah, they didn't have Bamford, they didn't have the goals. But then they just kept chopping and changing managers, directions going this way 1 minute, then this way. And then you end up with Sam Allardyce at the end, which probably, with no disrespect to Big Sam, when you start with Jesse Marsh and end up with Big Sam, it's 2 very contrasting characters, personalities, types of managers. So, we got that one wrong as well.
Do you know what I would say? What I found really interesting, looking at there's hardly any teams that actually have kept their manager this season for the whole season. I think there's only about 6 teams or something like that.
Yeah.
And Nottingham Forest, obviously, they've stayed up. They stuck with Steve Cooper, and I do think that there is more sense sometimes, even if you are in that relegation battle and it's all going wrong. I do think that there is a lot of credit to be said for keeping your manager and just seeing what happens, because the more you chop and change things, it disrupts the squad. You don't really know what's going on, though you're trying to implement all these different ideas, especially if you get 2 or 3 different managers like Leeds had with Javi Gracia, then Big Sam. Obviously, Tottenham, Stellini, mess, Ryan Mason, things like that. Southampton, Nathan Jones. I do think there is something to be said with sticking with your manager, and I think that is the reason why Forest have actually managed to stay up and Leeds have gone down.
Yeah.
Same with Leicester as well.
The underachievers. I went with. Yeah, that was alright, wasn't it? I went with Leicester, guys.
You went with Chelsea.
Quite happy with that. That kind of similar to your point with the managers. It is interesting. David Moyes, Cooper, and Brendan Rodgers, who I've spoken to a Leicester fan, and he was more of the opinion that it was the timing. They should have actually done it sooner, and then they would have been able to get a better option than the one that they had, and they would have been scrabbling around at the end. But you could also suggest that, it was really not going well, but would Brendan have kept them up somehow?
I think there's more chance of Brendan Rodgers keeping up than Dean Smith.
They were quite streaky. They had sort of a bad start, then ran a good run before the World Cup. Then in January, they bought a few players and I think hit a couple of teams 4-0. It might be Spurs in one of those ones. But yeah, I did think they would underachieve. I mean, that's a nice one for me. That's aged really well. But as has yours.
Oh no, well Chelsea.
Nailed on.
Who's a better shout there, Leicester or Chelsea?
You got to say
Chelsea.
Chelsea. Come on.
I'll take Chelsea.
No one could have foreseen what was going to happen with Chelsea this season.
I went the opposite with that. I think it's one of those things where something gets hyped so much. I'm a natural born hater. I was like, I've got to pull that down. And I think I just had a feeling that I was always talking about Thomas Tuchel, and I didn't feel like he's this manager that's going to take him to a league title. There was times where during the summer people were saying Chelsea could compete for the league, and so I was like, that's never going to happen. And if that's the expectation, I didn't expect them to finish in the bottom half. I did think maybe 5th, 6th, 7th, but they've actually had an awful season. But hey, listen, back to you, breakout player. We're doing well. He's going back and forth.
Yeah, you two have got it nailed on.
Yeah, I think that there's an element of safety there with a Man City player, but I think, especially with Haaland being there, I'm not sure if that's... it's okay. He didn't do badly, Julian Alvarez. I think if you chuck in the World Cup as well, then it looks really good.
Yeah.
Skamaka.
Yeah, Skamaka the attacker.
Yes, Skamaka the slacker.
Skamaka the slacker.
We're coming up with a lot of names for him. I did really love his stint in Italy, and I felt he could have recreated it in the Premier League. But there is a history of players that come from Italy to the Premier League and don't adapt. And he's another one of those.
There's also a bit of a West Ham curse, isn't there, with strikers? They always seem to struggle with them.
Always.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
They ended up having Antonio Skamaka and Ings by the end of the season, and only Ings was firing and the other two weren't. So it's a bit of a... I like the guy, handsome fella, nice trim, good tats, but it didn't quite work out. So.
Doesn't always make a player, does it?
Yeah. Right, we have Player of the Year. You guys had. James, you had Kane. You had Salah. By all accounts.
Was he robbed? 30 goals in that team?
It was only 60.
Nearly 50% of the goals they scored this year? Come on.
6 off Haaland. You've got to give him the credit. He's creating nothing in a Tottenham side.
Yeah,
he's creating and finishing.
We were having a debate saying, and just very quickly, if Kane played for City...
It was you. I've spoken to everyone about this.
It was you.
I couldn't remember who it was who told me it. Go on.
If Kane played for City, would he score more goals than Haaland?
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the sort of flip to that is, the types of goal Haaland's scoring is very different to how Kane would score goals at City. So they're creating chances because of the profile of Haaland, which has made them so complete.
Sure.
Whereas does Kane provide you that?
I think Kane adapts his game the way City have adapted their game to suit Haaland. I think Kane adapts. Kane doesn't have to drop so deep as he does at Tottenham because he'd be getting the service from Grealish, De Bruyne,
He loves
Bernardo.
doing it. He wants the ball. He wants it to be
but he
about
also
him.
has no choice. He didn't do it as much when Eriksen was there or Dele Alli was there or there was some type of creativity going on behind.
Kane scores goals.
Kane scores goals wherever he goes.
I think he's a better finisher.
And I'm sorry, to only be 6 behind Haaland in a team like Tottenham with the season they've had, he just deserves so much more plaudits than I think he's getting.
Totally. You went with Salah?
Yeah, I think he has actually had a really good season. I think there's an obsession with people saying, X player hasn't been consistent for the entire duration. There's actually only a handful of players. De Bruyne right now, people are saying, was consistent all season. He was not. He was poor at the start of the season. So Salah felt like a no-brainer. And the Golden Boot shout, we both went for Kane. And I don't think, actually all three of us went for Kane.
Yeah.
And I think it's the second time he scored 30 goals and not won the Golden Boot.
Really?
Mental.
Yeah, that's harsh.
Absolutely mad. First manager sacked before we wrap up. It's you had Silver, James.
You really hated Fulham in pre-season.
Really hated
So, I remember this. There was logic to this, right? I just remember either way, I thought it was a safe bet because I think what was happening, he in one of his last pre-season games, he kicked off because they hadn't bought the centre-back that they wanted, I think. They hadn't spent that much money because they didn't spend as much money as they have in previous season because they'd done so well the year this time as opposed to other times. And they had spent a lot in previous times that they'd come up into the Premier League. So I just thought that he would either get fed up quite quickly and get the sack if they started badly, or if he did well, would then maybe jump to another team, which he has done in the past. But yeah, I mean, massively wrong.
You might be right for next season when we do the pre-season predictions.
One of the few that survived, actually, isn't it?
Yeah,
one of the few.
Lampard you went with, who, I mean, that's a good job.
Yeah, I mean, he could have been sacked twice this season.
I agree.
He's had a torrid time. I've just never been convinced on Lampard as a manager. I think there's a tweet that went around when he's at Derby. He took Derby from 7th to 7th. Then obviously he went to Chelsea. He brings great vibes. And
6 to 6, because
the
people get angry.
6 to 6, sorry.
Yeah.
And then this second round at Chelsea hasn't worked either. So
I totally agree with you. I always thought it would be Lampard to go first. I mean, he wasn't actually first. Scott Parker and Tuchel shortly after. But I do not know how Frank Lampard keeps getting jobs. I don't know.
I don't think he'll be getting another one.
I don't know how though. But I mean, to keep getting keep going back to Chelsea. I know it was full vibes, but I mean, there were no vibes.
Do you know,
None.
in like 25 years' time, people will say like for vibes, and like my child will go, ugh.
Yeah.
Like the cringe of that. That's such a 2023
Just here for the vibes.
sentence. But yeah, he's had a tough time.
Okay, that's all of our predictions. Let us know in the comments if you agree with those. Who did you have in your pre-season predictions? And what do we think is going to happen next season? That's always interesting. Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.